It was a really long off season talking and speculating what exactly would transfer quarterback Maalik Murphy look like in this Duke offense. We found out over the weekend in week one, and it looked pretty good. And the Duke football team, all in all, taking steps in the right direction. This is Locked On Blue Devils.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Today is Wednesday, September 4th, 2024. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop for everything going on in the life of Duke athletics. Really excited to talk about this Duke football team with what they were able to do over the weekend, picking up their first win against Elon. We got to talk about Maalik Murphy, his debut as the Duke football quarterback, and who better to join us on the program than Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review, as we love all of your support coming through in the algorithms. I talk about them a whole lot, but to keep growing the show, those written reviews do a whole lot for us. Watch the show on YouTube each and every day. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video, share it with your friends, all those things, and follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Here he is, back with us for another week on the program. We were talking before we got going. Josh and I have done this over 100 times, being able to chat with one another on Locked On Blue Devils. Let's keep running that number up, man, as here we are in the 2024 season now.
Yeah, man, we've talked about a lot of Duke stuff over the 100 plus episodes. And you're doing a great job with Locked On here. And for the listener, I know you guys probably think that like, oh, this is just fun. It's just as fun. And it is. But there's also work. It's also hard work and getting people scheduled and making sure that, that their schedule matches with his schedule and like all that. And so, JJ, I really do appreciate it, man. Doing something. Listen, we do it once a week during football season. Doing 5 days a week for 10 months out of the year and 3 days a week after that is commendable, man. You do a good job.
Appreciate that, man. And really excited to talk now about a football team that's played a game this season. That's the best part, is that when we have these 100-plus conversations, so often they're in off-season mode when we're sitting here trying to speculate exactly what it would look like. You were there on site over the weekend. We can now say Manny Diaz has led a Duke football team into a football game and into a victory. I love hearing from you directly, and I know other Duke fans do as well. What was that environment like, man? Take us inside Wallace Wade Stadium. How would you best describe the atmosphere?
Yeah, well, first of all, throughout the day, and this was depending on what weather app you looked at, you either knew there was going to be some rain, or like my Apple weather app, it did not show rain, and there was a monsoon of sorts that hit a couple of different times throughout the day. So shout out to the Duke grounds crew. Once again, that playing service is just incredible. Still pretty wet by the time game time hit, but all that to say, I do believe that the weather kept some people away. Obviously, it's also a holiday weekend, but I think the weather kept some people away. But the overwhelming success of the evening was the Devil's Deck. That there were a lot of question marks around it. Who was going to be in it, how many people were going to be in it. First of all, it looked full. Now, I wasn't able to go into it. I was in a different location, but I was able to see it very well. It looked full, like from the stands, and I'm sure they could fit way more people in there, but it looked full. They had the DJ with the blue lights up in the middle, and like the students were in that section. So like there was kind of that kind of more party vibe there. There was cornhole going on. And so I believe that was the overwhelming success of the night. And then, the attendance, it is what it is. It's Elon, number one. It's on a holiday weekend, and it was raining for literally the 8 hours, previous. So, at the end of the day, I thought it was a success. I think Duke announced 18,000 fans. That's obviously lower than what you want on opening night. But I think you're going to see a bounce back as far as fans being there for that UConn game coming up in 2 weeks.
Yeah, without a doubt. And a Friday night game, of course, adds various challenges this time of year. I'm sure several in the community had their own children playing in high school football games. Who knows where across the state, wanting to go and support them and do that. But nonetheless, a successful debut. Duke wins by a score of 26-23. I talked a good bit about
26-3.
Did I say 23?
You did.
I gave them a lot more
way
points on the board. In my head, I was doing the math and the point differential between the two, right? 26 minus 3 equals 23. Come on, JJ, get with it. 26-3 is the final.
I'm sure defensive coordinator Jonathan Packey would want to make sure you said 3
exactly.
instead of 23, right?
And the 3 came right there at the end, man, in the last 60 seconds of the game. What did you make of the defensive effort?
Well, first of all, for those of you who took the over at 23.5, sorry, they kicked the field goal at the end there. So what did I make of the defense? Well, number one, I mean, we have been talking, as we mentioned, we've talked a whole lot on this podcast, JJ, but one of the things that we talked about in the offseason, was the Manny Diaz defense, right? And like how he is a defensive coach and how he is, he leans defense. We mentioned Jonathan Packey, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, 3 weeks ago, we talked about what is one area on defense that Duke is going to excel at. And I believe you and I both spoke about tackles for loss.
Yep.
And so the defense comes out in week 1 with 16 tackles for loss. 16. That is second in the country after week 1. And so that was awesome. 8 sacks. It was really good to see VJ Anthony as active as he was. He's really been in the weight room a lot this offseason. He had an incredible game. Cam Bergeron, who was the nickel replacement really for Brandon Johnson from last year's team, who went on to Oregon, by the way, had a really great game for them, had an interception in the end zone. But Cam Bergeron led the team with 8 sacks. They were creating, havoc all over the field. And sure, we gave up some, short yardage throws on the outside, but I almost think that that's the way this defense is structured is, you go all out to get to the quarterback, and then you got to make sure you give yourself a little bit of padding there on the outside in order to not, get burned. And so overall, JJ, I'm sure, if you're Manny Diaz, you have to look at that and say, like, that was a job well done by Jonathan Packey and the coaching staff on that side of the football. But then the players went out and executed it. And so it was really cool to see that. 16
tackles for loss, as you said, for the Blue Devils. Last year, they didn't have a single game with more than 10 on the season, never got into the double-digit mark. They had 16, the most for Duke since 2007. And then those 8 sacks are the most but since 2019, when Duke had 9 against Miami, when Manny Diaz was on the opposite sidelines as the head coach.
Yeah, that's a good pull there.
Yeah, good numbers there for the Duke football team. And excited for what the defense can do moving forward.
Well, I mentioned VJ Anthony and I also mentioned Cam Bergeron. Cam Bergeron has already surpassed, I believe, his tackles for loss for last year.
Yeah.
And I think VJ's a half sack away from what he did all of last season already.
There we go.
So that's really cool for players like that. So in the era of transfer portal and new guys coming in, and Duke benefited from that, it's really neat to see the guys that have been there for 2, 3, and 4 years who are now Cam Bergeron getting their chance, right? And to see them capitalize on it's really neat to see.
All right, let's talk about quarterback, though. Maalik Murphy is the big storyline for a lot of people from the outside looking in when you take a look at the Duke football program. How did he fare in his debut? We'll tell you a little more after this timeout. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available for U.S. customers. Locked On Blue Devils here today on this Wednesday, September 4th. I'm JJ Jackson. He is Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Maalik Murphy debuts as the quarterback. What'd you think of his performance?
Well, 291 yards throwing the football. Completion percentage, probably wasn't exactly what he wanted, but there were, I don't know, JJ, 5, 6, 7 that were like fingertips. And so I think if he gets that dialed in, I mean, he threw for 291 and he wasn't dialed in. And so if he gets dialed in, now I understand the level of competition. I understand that, this Friday, Duke's heading to Evanston, Illinois, for a game with Northwestern, and the defense is going to be on a different level than it was this past Friday night. But I believe Maalik Murphy had a great game. I believe Brewer called a great passing game. I believe they kept the ball on the outside. Maalik underthrew a couple of deep balls, but the majority of the deep balls he threw, vast majority of them, it was where only his guy could catch them, and that was it. And that's what you really want there. You want it to be your guy, and the defender has no, way of getting the ball. So I thought it was great. I thought he made good decisions. I believe the offensive line did an incredible job in pass blocking. I believe he wasn't sacked one time. I can only remember a couple of different times where I felt like he was even rushed or hurried to get the ball out of the pocket. I don't believe he got knocked on the ground. I could be wrong there, but I don't believe he hit the ground. And so, for Duke fans, I'm sure after 2 years of Riley Leonard type quarterbacking, I'm sure Duke fans, would like to see some more running, but that's not a part of Maalik's game, at least not right now. And so all in all, I was very pleased with Maalik Murphy. If you watched his throws, you saw that deep ball, you saw the touch that he has. And then I thought he did a pretty decent job on the short routes as well. And so if I'm Coach Brewer, I'm saying, listen, if we're going to grade on a scale of 1 to 10, you were a 7, and let's get that to an 8 as soon as possible. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Definitely not a 4 and not a 5. He was
right.
He was good for sure.
Yeah, 26 of 40, 291 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns and the 1 interception. That second touchdown pass to Eli Pan, he just zipped that football in there. We heard all about the arm strength, but just seeing kind of things like that, knowing the windows that are going to be there, it's really important to be able to have a little bit of zip to those passes if you're a quarterback. And we learned that Maalik Murphy certainly has that.
Yeah, he's got the arm strength for sure. And then I went back to rewatch the game, but I should have taken note of this. But I think, conservatively speaking, there were 4 deep balls that would have been touchdowns or close to it that were fingertip balls that just barely were missed by the receiver. And I don't know how many of those 4 Duke wound up scoring later on in that same drive. But let's just say out of 2 of them would have been additional touchdowns. Now you're looking at, Duke winning 40-3 instead of, 26-3. And so I personally believe he was just a couple of, deep balls away from putting up 4 touchdowns, 400 yards, right? And then we're having an even bigger conversation about Maalik Murphy.
Yeah, no, just all in all, remarkable job in his debut. We've talked about it long enough. I'm just excited that now we got to see him playing a real game against an opponent and kind of leading the way for this team. I mentioned Eli Panko on that touchdown pass. So great to have him back and healthy. 7 catches for Jomo as well. Those wide receivers make the job a whole lot easier for somebody like Maalik Murphy. I thought that wide receiver room had a good day.
They did, and I would think if they were on this podcast right now, a couple of them would have said, "Yeah, I had a good day," but there were a couple that I should have pulled in,
sure,
that I just didn't. And so I don't blame that on the receivers. I don't blame that on Maalik. I actually think what could be at play there was a little bit of a soft field. As I mentioned, there was a lot of rain that hit throughout the entire day, and I while the field drains very quickly, that wet grass. I've never played college football, but I understand when the field is mushy and grass is wet, you don't quite have that zip that you have when everything is, you know what I mean, when everything's perfect. And so I think that can be the cause of a little bit. But you're right, Jordan Moore had a great game. I understand Maalik wound up throwing the 1-yard pass to Jeremiah Hazley after this, but the Jordan Moore almost touchdown, like I couldn't believe it when I saw it. That I'm like, he obviously was in. But then when you went back and looked at the replay, his knee did touch a little bit. I couldn't believe the way his body moved into the end zone so quickly. I thought for sure he'd gotten in there, but yeah, great game. Samir Hagens was solid as well, and I believe it was 9 different receivers that Maalik Murphy completed passes to. So he spread the ball around.
Love that.
And didn't key in on one guy. So
Love
yeah,
that.
very good.
Duke is 1-0 on the season. They've got Northwestern coming up on Friday. We'll see how they can build off of that performance. Let's talk a little bit about the run game as well for the Duke football team as something that they can improve on. And we'll do that after we take our final timeout here on today's episode. Show today brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Football season is back. I can't believe it. Tomorrow, the NFL is back. What a game we've got between the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs taking on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We've got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.com. Go check them out. They're a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. I'm JJ Jackson. He's Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Tell me a little bit about the show, Josh.
Yeah, we're in mid-season form. Now week 2, heading into week 2. Weekly podcasts typically release on Tuesday morning. Sometimes we get them out late Monday night, depending on how quickly our producer turns them around. But we talk deep dive into Duke football. Episodes are typically an hour to hour and a half long. And we give you, we answer listener questions, we preview our opponents, and then, we give you our predictions and whatnot. So a lot of fun there, give you a background on our opponent and the history there between the two schools. And so just a lot of fun. And you can find us on Twitter, X at Duke FB Talk, YouTube. You can search for Section 17 podcast. And then our website is DukeFootballTalk.com. So we appreciate anything. I was reading, JJ, I was actually pulling up. Speaking, I know you talk about reviews and ratings, right? All the time. And so I was looking up the Locked On Blue Devils podcast.
Oh, yeah?
And a fella by the name of the Big RRR said he loves this podcast and he thanks you.
Shout out to the Big RR. I appreciate that. The Big
RR. No, it's 3 R's. RRR.
Okay. Gotcha.
So whoever that guy is. So
we love you. Yeah, we appreciate that. Even when I say scores wrong and that sort of thing. So Duke won 26-3 against Elon over the weekend. Now they play Northwestern in their next game this Friday. You look at the numbers, though, and I think a lot of people were underwhelmed, to say the least, at what we saw from the rushing attack. What do you make of that, Josh?
Yeah, so that's the big question, right? I mean, was it a scheme issue that Coach Brewer is able to go back and film and say, hey, we were calling a certain type of run play and it just wasn't going to work with what the defense was offering? I have no idea. Or was it just the fact that our guys are better pass blockers than they are run blockers? So obviously it's a different, that's a different game for offensive linemen to pass block and to run block. And so with pass blocking, and once again, I'm no football player, but with pass blocking, that you're in a little bit more of defense mode and you're just protecting. And then with run blocking, you're attacking. And, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but it's going to be very intriguing over the next 1 to 2 weeks to see if the run game continues to struggle, or was it just something from week 1? Obviously Duke's got the guys in the backfield. I think one of the questions we had leading into the season was, how was that backfield going to look? And, it really is taking on the 1-2-3 of Jacquez Moore, Star Thomas, transfer running back, and Peyton Jones. And so that's the kind of the way it looked there. It wouldn't surprise me to see Peyton Jones' numbers, come up a little bit throughout the season as far as number of carries.
Yeah.
But once again, at a certain point, Duke just had to kind of rely on throwing the football. And I know Maalik is fine with that. I'm pretty sure Coach Brewer is fine with that. But in every good football team has got to be able to line up and run the ball for 3 or 4 yards when they need to. And so, Duke's got to figure that out. And as I told our guys on this week's recording on our podcast, if I knew the answer to that question, I'd be on the coaching staff.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Divvying up the carries is something that we'll kind of see how all of that plays out. But just an underwhelming performance. The running back room as a whole, the rushing attack for Duke, just 2.2 yards per carry against Elon in a game like this, and not many running opportunities for Maalik Murphy himself. I'm really curious. Again, people might jump to a conclusion that he's more of a runner than he actually is. I think we're going to see over the course of the season. No, this is a quarterback. However, there's just such an added element to your game if you can find more kind of design looks for Murphy to get the ball and pick up a few yards and create rhythm and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And the question is that a part of, the offense and a part of his game? And so, he is known as a pocket passer. He showed that Friday that he likes to stay in the pocket. When you and I were in Charlotte and we were talking to Maalik,
yep.
He made the comparison of himself to Justin Herbert, another passing pocket quarterback, bigger guy. And so I don't know what that looks like, just to be honest with you. Obviously, there are two different reasons and ways quarterbacks run. One of them is by design, which is what you kind of want, right? You want it to be like, okay, we want you to run. The other is by necessity, and that is when your pocket breaks down and you got to get out of Dodge. And so, Duke's offensive line protected him well enough where the second one didn't come into play on Friday night, and they didn't call anything, obviously, for him to run. So there will come a time this season, JJ, whether it's this Friday night in Evanston or whether it's later on in the ACC schedule, where Maalik Murphy's going to have to get out of that pocket. He's going to have to make something happen. And we'll see. I think it'll be funny if a little cornerback tries to come up and tackle him, and just he could literally bulldoze right over him. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting. But you don't want a kid. You want a kid to be himself. You want the quarterback to be himself. If he's a pocket passer, more power to him.
Yeah.
Just know every now and then we're going to need a yard or two, and we're going to need that 6'5", 240-pound
Yeah, use the big frame
to do something with it. Yeah, for sure.
He's going to be ready to do that, I'm sure. All right, so Duke and Northwestern coming up on Friday. Going to be a fun one to see these teams kind of go head-to-head. But before we get there, just final thoughts on the win over Elon. Who are 2 or 3 guys, Josh, that we haven't mentioned today that you do or want to give more praise to, which is kind of the individual performance that they had in that win?
Yeah, I mean, I think you may have mentioned him in passing, but I think Eli Pancol, having him back was really key. And he had a really good game. So that was good. I'm trying to think somebody we haven't mentioned. Ryan Smith. I like what Ryan Smith did on the defensive line. He got a sack, maybe a sack and a half in this game. I really like what he is. Our defensive ends in general. Michael Reese was in there making some stuff happen. But yeah, those are a couple of guys that I think of on our side of the football. I mean, on Duke's side of the football that we haven't mentioned. And of course, Jeremiah Hazley. I love what he's bringing to the tight end room for sure.
Yeah, and I go back to what Cam Bergeron was able to do on the defensive side of the football. I go back to kind of our preseason conversations and so much conversation in that area around other players on that Duke defense, right?
I mean, Alex Howard. We spoke about Alex Howard, and Alex Howard played a ton of snaps Friday night, and was I forget how many tackles he ended up with, but I think he was top 3 or 4 on the team in tackles. So one of the things I kind of called the offseason was I felt like he was going to get plenty of snaps. So
no doubt. No doubt. Good performance from this Duke football team. They pick up a big win. Now they take on Northwestern this upcoming Friday. Josh, really great to see you on the show. As always, man, do me a favor and tell people how they can best support you and your team that you got over there with the Section 17 podcast.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, if you're going to be at the Northwestern game, it's going to be really cool. I'm going to be there. So if you're there, hit me up. I'd love to meet you. I'm going to be in that like lacrosse-ish stadium. So that's going to be really cool. But yeah, so Section 17 podcast, you can find us, like I said, on our website, DukeFootballTalk.com, anywhere you listen to podcasts, ratings and reviews, as JJ would appreciate for Locked On. We appreciate them over there. And listen, we try to interact with our fans. We do weekly giveaways. We give away T-shirts. We give away mini helmets. We give away stuff. So, we try to make it a community, man. And so the Duke football community is a smaller community, so that we got to stick together.
Yes,
so,
we do.
But anyway, I appreciate all your support, man. I really appreciate you having me on now for the 100th and however many times. So
keep running those numbers up. And hey, hopefully you had quite a sales pitch to the Boozer twins over the weekend. That's the other.
It was good having them in town, and it was also cool. I think we've spoken. I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but I'm sure it's been talked about. It was good to see Mama Boozer, in town with them wearing Duke gear, and so like that's been a little bit of the go back and forth there between like dad and mom. So it was good to see Mama Boozer wearing Duke gear with the boys on their visit.
Yeah, let's get that commitment done. That'd be so big. All right, Josh, we'll talk again soon, okay?
Have a good day, man. We'll see you.
All right, that's Josh Cox joining us here on today's show. Go support his work as always. Does really good stuff with those guys at the Section 17 podcast. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.